Board of Selectmen meeting, Monday, April 22nd at 6:03 p.m. This is actually a joint meeting. We are joined tonight by the Finance Committee and the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, either side of the room. We are here tonight primarily to review the town meeting warrant articles and to place the board. We'll be placing them on the warrant for both the special town meeting and the annual town meeting in May. Could we open the meeting by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Does FinCom have a quorum? Would you like to open officially?
FinCom meeting will be open at 6:03 also.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion from the board to sign Treasury Warrant 22 and payroll?
Make a motion that we sign Treasury Warrant 22 and payroll.
Can I have a second?
A second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We're gonna go straight to public comment. Is there anyone here who would wish to speak? Come on up, name and address. Thank you for being here.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Paula Stinson. I live at 228 Main Street in Rutland. And I was before the board, approximately a year ago, talking about the island on Maple Ave and Main Street. And I had done it for over 30 years, planting it, had invested thousands of dollars in that island to keep it looking good. Since the signs have gone in, it got all torn up. The signs have been placed. I was told last year that the town would fix it up so that I can plant it again, and that hasn't been done. And I think it really looks disgraceful when you drive by it to see it looking like that. So I'm here asking again if something could be done. I would be happy to help out in any way possible. I would mix cement and lay cobblestone and do anything to get that fixed up and looking decent, especially for Memorial Day and the 4th of July. And that's all I have to say.
On behalf of the board, I want to apologize, because I remember you coming in, and I remember us kind of going through the summer, and little things were done, and promises were being made, and then all of a sudden the season was over, and yeah.
So we'll give it another shot
We're giving it another shot.
this year.
Fresh, new eyes. Yes.
Perfect. Well, I thank you very much. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone here for public comment? Else here for public comment?
I'll reserve mine for your next meeting, when it's not so crowded and
It's not so crowded.
no, Jeff saw something the other day at a meeting, and he was a little upset about it, and I was hoping to hear a little bit more about that at a later time.
Oh, okay.
So thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going straight into town meeting warrant article review. Most of you here know the process by which we do that. We do have 2 warrants to set. The first is the special, which will be held at 6 o'clock on the 11th of May. And if everybody has those copies in front of them, I think the reason we were going to try to do this tonight with everybody is because, you know, and not everything has this, but there are some questions about some of the items coming up. Whether it's relative to capital expenditures, whether it's relative to changes in the way we manage the finances. And we want to make sure everybody at least knows the page that we were on, and if there are questions that we all had a chance to discuss them equally. So we're hoping this is an interactive process. Please feel free to speak up as we place these. We're going to jump right in, so unless anybody has specific questions, the board will jump right in and start placing things. And we'll hear a motion in a second, and then when conversation comes up, anybody has any comments, questions, whatever, about a particular article, please speak up. So we're gonna start right in, again, with the special town meeting warrant. Do you have that in front of you? You're looking at 5 articles. You'll note Article 4 was just duplicated by mistake, just a typo error. And we are going to jump right in. So if we could look, Article 1 is our snow and ice deficit, to see if the town will vote to appropriate or transfer from available funds sum of money to snow and ice supplies account for FY 2019, or take any action in relation thereto. Could I get a motion to place?
Motion to place.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments? Joe, at this time, what is our estimate?
Probably about 150,000.
And that's including maintenance, fuel, and other stuff that's related to snow and ice removal. And we haven't done the annual go through the rest of the budget to see where there's money available internally to place toward that before we go through our free cash expenditures too. So just to throw that all out there as well.
Are there any questions? All in favor of placing Article 1?
Aye.
Unanimous? Article 2, electric bills, to see if the town will vote to transfer a sum to cover electric bills received by water and sewer accounts. As you know, we had a transition issue and some unexpectedly higher bills that came in to the water sewer services. We're gonna try to cover those. That money needs to specifically come from water sewer enterprise. And it's possible that legal will tell us that that will go on to the warrant language. Could I get a motion to place?
Motion to place Article 2. Second.
Is there any discussion?
It's about $8,200.
Thank you.
And that has to come from water sewer because it's to service water and sewer, just for clarification.
Correct.
Yes, it's electricity that was either used at the water filtration plants or pumping into the water filtration plant or used at one of the half a dozen wastewater pumping stations we have.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Sheila,
Oh, I'm
can I
sorry.
just go back one quick on Article 1 and this one? When will these numbers be refined to where they are coming from and be a specific number so
In the
that we
motions.
can,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
well, no, at the meeting, but we want to review them and either going to give a favorable or unfavorable response before that period, before that point.
Yep. Okay,
So
so,
when will that happen? Because we
So-
only got a couple weeks left.
I know it. So this week, anything that you're hearing tonight that you want firm numbers on, we're
We
gonna
can get that,
make an
yeah.
effort to get you the firm numbers, the numbers that are gonna go into the motion, so that you'll have them for your, and you're meeting Thursday, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
I mean, at this point, I think you're gonna have, we're placing these tonight, so you'll have the articles in front of you, and we're gonna get you as many numbers as we can in time for you for Thursday. And I don't care, it always takes them the day before, right? 24 hours? Is that the, okay. Article 3, police cruiser lease payment, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds. The sum is $15,139.86 to pay off the remaining lease payment on the 2017 Explorer Cruiser.
So moved.
Thank you for place. Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Nick couldn't be here tonight.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
What question? So why, this is not in the budget numbers that we had presented, or
No,
it
this-
is?
If I may, this is the previous lease that was signed, so this would clear up that final lease that we have on that vehicle. The 3 leases that are in the budget are to start the replacement cycle with 3 new cruisers after this last payment is paid off. Otherwise, that 45 that's in the budget currently would be 2 and then 2/3 of a car.
So this finishes off the lease on this particular cruiser, but we're still keeping this vehicle,
Yes,
even though this is the final payment?
it's the final payment because it's a lease to buy. Yep.
Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Article 4, town beautification, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from available funds. This will be free cash, the sum of $15,000 for outside landscaping hirer. And I think, Joe, this is a new one for us. You'll definitely want to speak to this a little bit. We've actually not, in my memory, done this.
Sure. Frankly, we're not landscapers at Public Works. We're really good at raking and maintaining and cleaning up stuff. But a lot of the town's buildings landscaping is not in the best shape. And we need a professional to come in and seed it and clean up some of the bushes and tell us what can go, what can stay. It's meant to be a one-time cost to get it where it needs to be, and we can take over maintenance after that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and the idea of putting it on the specialist so that you don't have to wait until July 1st to
Yes.
do some of this spring work?
In his budget.
Okay.
It's not in
Sorry.
this one's not in my budget.
No.
That was my question.
Yeah, no.
So is this for the services of the person to give you a plan, or is this to
No,
do
this is
actual
to
work?
get somebody on the ground, boots on the ground work.
So shouldn't we be doing this is just my 2 cents, Shouldn't we be looking what we should do and then coming back and say, this is gonna take X and that's gonna take Y, and just instead of just, I mean, this is just a number that we don't know if it's right, wrong, or otherwise.
We looked at some state contracts and figure out what they get a day and estimated roughly how many days they need to be here. That's what the number comes from.
Based off of the plan that we previously had for landscaping, on what needs to be planted, what needs to be spruced up, what needs to be mulched.
But where are those at? I mean, which buildings, I mean, I know you said all the buildings, but
Yeah.
But
There's gotta
there's
be a
nothing in
plan.
writing that said what this is specifically is gonna address.
So a
Okay.
scope.
Right.
Yeah.
We can get a scope.
Yeah.
I don't have it tonight, but we can get you a scope.
The only other question I have is how comes things like this didn't go on your budget that we've already approved?
we haven't approved, we've looked
Well,
at it,
that we've looked at.
reviewed, right.
This is gonna come from outside, he's saying it's a one-time,
It's a
and then
one-time
it's just gonna be.
cost.
So this isn't gonna be part of your
No.
20, okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Joe,
Yes, sir.
if I may, you may have already answered the question, one of your
Sure.
comments you made, but is this landscaping, hiring of landscapers, something that a lot of towns do? You say it's on the state bid sheet type thing, so I'm just curious as
Yeah,
to whether or not other towns
There
get
are,
into a situation where they have to do this.
the bid sheets are written, I would have to say yes, but I don't have a good example for you. The bid sheets are for any state or town agency. It could be, the Turnpike Authority wanted to dress up one of their facilities. It could be, DCR wanted to, do a building downtown. That's what the contracts are for.
Did Worcester use it?
Did Worcester use it? I can tell you Worcester has hired landscapers for Washington Square, I believe.
Okay.
But theirs are different. They maintain, Washington Square is maintained. Those contracts are more for maintenance. This is more to just get it up to where it needs to be so we could continue to maintain it.
Okay.
Can we use that towards Mrs. Stitson's Island?
Absolutely.
And that is gonna come up, somebody's gonna say, wow, what do you want? So maybe just to have the reason, the obvious reasoning behind it, that we need to do this, I mean, so we don't look like crap.
That was the
But-
intent.
So we just need, you need to have that line ready, so,
All right.
of the reasoning, we don't
May
want
not
it just
use-
to look pretty, we want it,
I may not use the
You know.
crap word.
well, maybe use the crap word. That was just my word.
No,
Uh,
but it's, yeah, but if you're doing one building and not others, people are gonna wanna know.
Of course.
And one island and not everybody else's island.
Not every hour, no.
Right, so there's gonna be some questions.
And it's a new thing for us.
It's wonderful, I think
We
it's
went and we looked
fabulous.
at it and said, boy, I mean, we cobbled together resources to get the grass raked off and clean up the stuff, but it needs a fresh look.
Good for you, I think.
Well, it's in that condition because we've been cutting budgets for so long. So, but no, it is time to.
But I still think you need a plan of what we're gonna do before
Sure.
we say yes to
Yep.
do a number.
We can get you a scope.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.
I think to the point of the FinCom, this is one of those articles that may well come up that night, a motion for no action if we end up with not enough free cash to cover it. This is probably the one that would have to be first on the shopping block.
But we got started. And if
We
we have
give
to
it a
try
shot.
again,
Yeah,
we'll try again.
all right, motion to place Article 4,
Make a motion to place Article 4, the town beautification.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Article 4 you noticed was duplicated, so we're skipping over that duplication, and Article 5 is our last one right now for the special, that's the solar pilot agreement. This is just to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to negotiate and sign the pilots with Select Energy. Select is the company that placed solar panels on the roofs of Naquag and Glenwood schools. Those projects were set to come online this month. We know that they were over at Naquag this past week doing landscaping and kind of finishing up. The savings in terms of electricity is going to the school. However, we are negotiating pilot for the use of the buildings.
Motion to place.
Second.
Discussion,
Question?
yes.
This payment in lieu of taxes agreement, is that 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? What's the payment term?
They've typically been 20.
20 years?
This one, we expect from Diane, who's in the process of negotiating, and I will say, getting some of the information she needed has been a little difficult. This will be a small one relative to the bigger projects in town. As you can imagine, it was just the square footage of the building.
Is it reducing payment in lieu? Or is it a flat rate?
Well, it should be flat. We don't know yet, but the article is only allowing the board to negotiate those terms and sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
The statute with regard to pilot agreements says that the executive office needs to be authorized to negotiate before signature. So that's why it's written as negotiate and sign the agreement, so the board would need to negotiate both the final dollar amount and the terms, so the length, if it's diminishing, if it's flat rate and things like that, as part of the full process for a pilot.
I was just curious as to, so when I said diminishing, I mean, are we gonna be getting taxes, yes or no, for that whole 20 years? Because we're giving them payment in lieu of taxes for that 20-year period? I'm not understanding why
They're
we're
paying us,
payment in lieu of taxes.
right?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
I was thinking the other way around. that
Oh.
We
No.
were
This is good news.
forgiving them the taxes on the contract.
No.
Oh,
No, we're making money.
No, it's,
Okay, all right.
So is this a lease or?
That just got really good for me, yes.
So after
Thank you.
20 years,
We're so used to
is
paying.
it like they take them or you own them, it's your choice?
Yeah, we worked with the consultant on this, and yeah,
Okay.
at the end of 20 years, there'll be a renegotiation.
And they maintain for the 20
Oh,
years?
absolutely. There were also eventualities worked in because the napalm roof, there were concerns about it being a rubber roof and what happens if there's a heavy snow load one year, and then that all got worked into the initial agreement. Yes,
Decommissioning, is that part of the agreement also? Okay, thank you.
yes. Beth Greenblatt, our solar consultant, has been really just instrumental
Yeah.
in negotiating these for us. She doesn't miss a trick, and she's really been working in the town's best interest in ensuring that we are covering all our bases when it comes to that.
You said that you renegotiate before at the 20-year period, but so how soon do those start, before the 20-year period? Is that written into the contract, or is that just something you do?
that's part of the negotiation that goes into the contract, so that'd be written into the contract rather than just wait for it to be up. But
Oh,
it's
right.
normally a year and a half to 2 years.
I was gonna say, yeah, as long as there's enough time ahead, so you're not right down to the wire, and then
Yeah.
you're kinda stuck.
Yeah, it's normally a year and a half to 2 years, subject to negotiation for the final contract.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Is there anything else that anyone, that we missed, heaven forbid, we've been going over this for a while now, that we believe should have been brought up for the special town meeting? Anybody, things we've talked about? Okay. We're moving on to the annual. Article 1 is the standard to hear the annual reports. Can I get a motion to place?
Motion to place Article 1.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Do I just take your silences?
Hmm?
Silences,
I'll tell you
yes.
when I'm saying no.
All right. Article 2, standard number 2, town vote to fix the salaries and compensation of elected town officers for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019.
Motion to place Article 2. Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 3, we're gonna jump right in and move the planning board bylaw subcommittee's article to see if the town will vote to amend the town's zoning bylaw by adding a new zoning bylaw article entitled Development Rate Limitation Bylaw, as set forth in the handout entitled May 11th, 2019 Annual Town Meeting, Development Rate Limitation Bylaw, also on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the town clerk to assign appropriate numbering to this bylaw in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of zoning bylaw or act in any other manner in relation thereto. Can I get a motion to place
I'll make the motion to place.
Second.
and discussion? I think everybody is aware that we have a managed growth bylaw subcommittee that's been working on this. I think we have 2 members here in the room.
1, 2, 3.
Three, sorry. 3 members in the room.
Well, 3 boards.
Their initial work was moved over and passed on to the planning board subcommittee, who have now met twice, I believe.
Yes.
And some changes have been made. A public hearing has been scheduled. Do you have the date?
Tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow is
23rd.
the public hearing, with us and the planning board, and actually I think that'll be in the big room, right?
Yeah.
Yep. There's still movement to be had, in the language. I don't know how many of you have been following the process, but does anybody have any comments about the placement of it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Article 4 is the Southern Worcester County Regional Vocational School Assessment for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019. So this is Bay Path. Motion to place.
Motion to place Article 4. Second.
Comments? Anyone? Bay
What's the
Path?
approximate funding for that?
I'll certainly get that from you.
Somebody has a big budget in front of them?
I think I had it.
While I'm looking for it increased about $100,000 this year due to increased number of students that are at Bay Path.
Okay.
Once the Wi-Fi connects, I'll get you a better answer.
549,916. It was a pretty significant jump this year, partially because of the fact that we have more students going than ever before, which was actually nice to hear. We had not hit our cap yet for number of students allowed at Bay Path. They certainly have wait lists to some of their other member towns. It did get reduced slightly from the original number that they gave us, down $8,000, but yeah, that's our assessment. Anyone? Comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Article 4 is placed. Article 5, we're moving on to Wachusett. Article 5 is the first of the 4 Wachusett articles. This one is the minimum local contribution beginning July 1, 2019. Motion to place?
Motion to place Article 5.
Thank you. Second. Any comments?
Is that number been firmed up to?
Oh yeah, the minimum local contribution is final. That's the formula.
That is fine.
Yep.
That's the one that's set by the state for us to go by.
And I know the FinCom had their presentation. You still have all that information, right, from the school committee. Did anybody have any questions about minimum local? Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Unanimous for Article 5. Article 6, next one, which is the Wachusett Regional Debt Service Assessment for the fiscal year. Motion to place.
Motion to place 6.
Second. Comments? As we know, that number went down slightly. Minimum local contribution went up slightly. All in favor of Article 6?
Aye. Aye.
Unanimous. Article 7, the third of 4, this is the transportation assessment. Motion to place?
Make a motion, we place Article 7.
Any second? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
This number was about flat from last year.
Mhm.
And finally, Article 8, the operations assessment for Wachusett. Motion to place?
Motion to place Article 8.
Second. Any comments?
Did that go up or down?
The overall Wachusett budget went up about 3.8%. All in favor?
So what if we don't place it on the ballot?
We're required to place the budget that the school committee presents us. We happen to break it out into 4 pieces, but we have to place the budget in some form in full.
And the 3.8, that's the district.
That's the
whole
district's
bu-
overall number.
That's not Rutland's increase.
Actually, Rutland's was about that as well, oddly.
3.8.
Yeah,
Came
Holden,
out to that?
it did. Holden saw the biggest increase. I think they were looking at something like
I have
7.2.
my sheet here.
Yeah.
It's on that big sheet right there.
That's fine. I have it.
No, that's fair.
You want to know what the other towns were, is that what you're asking?
No, I didn't realize. But I've got the numbers. I don't need anybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we don't really have an option, is the answer to Skip's question. We have to place something.
We do. We don't have an option to not place it. We have options as to how it gets handled on the floor, which we've tried many things.
For the 4 articles which we just placed, are any of those optional?
No.
Okay.
All of the numbers are based off foundation formula with the exception of the operations assessment. And it used to be called RASA, but it's essentially what the district is asking for above and beyond what the foundation formula allows them to take.
Okay, what happens on the floor happens on the floor.
Right, so there have been years where a motion was made and then the number amended from the floor or tried to amend. There have been years where the original motion was different from what the school committee had recommended. Trying to think. There's been years where it was predicated on an override. There's been a lot of different options. Am I missing any, Joe?
No, recommendation has been against it.
Yep.
That's about it.
Are there any recommendations from the members here not to place any of the 4 school articles?
You have to place.
Yeah.
You're not putting any numbers on
Right.
this yet. You
Yeah.
have to put them on.
Right.
So the warrant article would have to go on, any issues would have to go with the motions that then get put towards the warrant article that says, with that, we'll appropriate $450,000 from the tax levy or general operating budget or something like that, with it that comes after this gets set.
So our number, in case people were asking, is up 3.98%. That was our exact. Holden 6.35, Paxton 3.80, Princeton 1.97, Sterling 3.13. The number for Rutland, it's going from 12,062,627 to 12,542,131, an increase of 479,504. That's total.
An increase of how much?
$479,504.
If anybody's following the House budget, it's in committee, it was in committee, and Representative Ferguson has made some amendments that have been submitted. Hopefully we'll see some House numbers come back better.
Didn't the transportation numbers go down a little bit from the state?
Transportation stayed flat for the district.
For the district, okay.
The transportation reimbursement from the state may go up. At this point, I think what all the towns in the Wachusett district need to watch out for is if the state numbers come back positive, that our assessments go down.
Rather than stay stagnant.
Yeah.
That number, that includes full day kindergarten?
It does.
Yep.
If anybody has questions about what the district was looking at relative to their increases this year, they actually have a pretty good PowerPoint this year up on their site. They've also released a line item budget for the first time. We should thank Karen, who's not here. And they had 5 domains. One of them was the budget transparency, but full day kindergarten is estimated at about $1.2 million. They're offsetting that with $600,000 from a current kindergarten revolving account. So some of those costs are being absorbed by current monies being held from the revolving fund that's getting funded through private payment for full day K. They are adding more technology. They're looking at adding Chromebooks for the last 2 classes up at the high school, a textbook adoption program year 2, full-time middle school counseling for all the middle schools, which was not there before. But this is all on their site. That was a little bit of a breakdown of where some of their costs are coming from.
And for clarification, my understanding for full day kindergarten is that the first year it's a big hit to the town, to the district. After that, the state kicks in because it's shown that it's a yearly program, but
Okay.
it's kind of like a new program, so we don't have the back year data that the state can rely on.
Yeah, he said next year we get the money for this year's program, but the year back. Right.
Is that like a rough offset between what's taken out of their revolving?
Which offset the 600?
Yeah.
The sense we get is that they paid anything they could from the general fund this year relative to kindergarten costs so that the revolving fund could be held over. and offset kindergarten incoming costs for next year, knowing it was a big jump. That revolving fund, I expect.
Oh,
is
it's
going
not
be
being used to
dissolved.
offset the coming fiscal year's budget. It's being used to offset a future.
The upcoming full-day kindergarten big hit budget, so that they could,
No, that's my question.
Yeah.
So that number, do
Sorry.
you know if it's roughly the same as what the state reimbursement will be in the following fiscal year? So it'd be kind of a wash
Oh.
in the
Right.
following fiscal year.
My understanding was that the state would be more, but I don't actually know,
Okay.
I don't have an actual answer.
Yeah, according to what he said at that meeting, it was gonna be quite a bit towards the full cost.
Mhm.
I don't know what the whole number was, but it's gonna be quite a bit more.
I think, Joe, my understanding was at that point, after next year, our initial year, you will be looking at kindergarten students counting the same as all of our other grades 1 through 12 students, whereas
Which
right now.
makes sense, yeah.
whereas
Yeah.
right now they're not
Yeah.
being funded that way.
Yeah, again, the state takes the numbers that they fund us by on October 1st of every year.
Right.
So
So
we
they
didn't
don't
have
have
full
that.
day K on October 1st, so the number we're getting is based off of everything we had last year.
Right.
So once we get that full October 1st number, they'll be built in after that.
No, the only reason I was asking is because it's a little alarming sometimes when you hear that they're using, revolving or excess and deficiency funding for year one. Well, what's that gonna do to our increase
Yeah.
in the following year? But if it's
Yeah.
gonna be kind of offset by state aid, then you feel a little better about
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And like I say, I would expect they're gonna have to dissolve that revolving fund once there's no more
I would
half-day
think so,
kindergarten.
because they're not taking anything in,
No
right?
more privately funded kindergarten. All right, any more questions on the operations assessment, Article 8? All in favor of placing?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Article 9 is our municipal departments, general government funding for the fiscal year. Motion to place?
Motion to place Article 9.
Second.
Any comments? Obviously, I know FinCom is deep in the budgets right now. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Article 10, to place defraying the debt service for the coming fiscal year. Motion to place?
Motion to place Article 10.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, Article 11. And just an FYI, right, Mike, you reached out to legal regarding order here.
Yes, so Article 11 and 12 are to raise and appropriate the sum of money to operate the water and the sewer departments. Article 13 is the motion that the board approved at their previous meeting to combine the water and sewer enterprise funds. I spoke with legal, and legal said since Article 11 and 12 is to appropriate a sum of money to operate the water and the sewer department, that those don't need to come after the combination of the account, because in the end, no matter what, those departments need to be funded in order to operate. So their budgets that get submitted, someone's still gonna have to be paid, the machines still have to run, the water still has to go in the pipes. Where that money comes from in the end, be it a combined account or a separate account with a higher rate increase, is something that gets decided after. So these two to fund the two departments don't need to come after the combination of the account.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Isn't the, typically in the wording of the motion to appropriate for both water and sewer, the motion has in it, I thought, from whatever, water receipts or sewer receipts.
Mhm.
That's in the motion.
Yes.
So if we don't know which receipts it's being taken
Well-
from, how's that motion worded?
I did speak to legal about that as well. Receipts just talks about the money that comes in for water and the money that comes in for sewer. So the
Right.
receipts get deposited into the account.
Right.
Right now, the receipts get deposited into separate accounts. The receipts are still being the ones that fund water. Water receipts will still fund water, and sewer receipts will still fund sewer, but they'll be deposited into the same account and then accounted for at their deposit. So receipts just mean, when we say that to fund the water account out of water receipts, it's still the revenue coming in on the water bill that's being deposited into a combined account. In the end, it's really just adding a level of accounting, but keeping the same process, if that makes sense.
A little bit.
I don't think it was worded that way in the past, but if legal said you can word it, I think it specifically addressed each enterprise account, so.
I guess the ultimate answer though was, it didn't matter.
Correct.
But to Joe's question, do you feel like it matters to the people in the meeting and we should place the controversial article first so
I'd
that
take
we
that.
clear the air?
My opinion would be yes on that. I mean, if you think about, my understanding of what's happening here is to some extent, there's some sewer receipts being used to pay for the water operation at the end of the day.
Right.
The other way around.
Vice versa.
So, to have language in a motion to appropriate money from water or sewer receipts when it's really coming from water revenue is a little, I don't know.
I got you. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
But in relation to your question or comment, the way I read these three articles, it really is not saying that, which is one of those
The
things
motion
that
does though. When you make the motion to appropriate the budget, it most certainly has
So
the
that
water
was,
receipts.
because that was something we knew was gonna be a biggie, okay.
Just for clarification, just take it out of order, and then hopefully people understand where it's coming from anyway, so.
I just assume get the order right the first time so people don't think we're trying to.
Oh, you can place these in different orders?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
then I would just put it, I would put it ahead of these, yeah.
I guess my question would be, why are we and to me, I think the big question from the audience is gonna be, from the town people, why? Are we running into trouble on sewer that we didn't do the right rates in the first place? That now we have to combine, and the people who pay for the water now have to pay for the sewer too? That, to me, is a question that's gonna come up.
Joe Buckley?
Am I wrong? I mean,
No, you're not.
okay.
And I may slip here a little bit. There are no real, I think there's only certified retained earnings in sewer of around 20,000. There's certified retained earnings in water of around 700,000. Sewers, we estimate sewer on the wastewater side will be 300,000 in the hole by the end of the fiscal year. We recommended combining the accounts to use the retained earnings from water to cover that balance and then raise rates after July 1. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I guess if I'm sitting in the audience saying, okay,
Because, let me just preface that by a couple quick things.
okay,
Through the consultant, because I asked similar questions, we can't borrow that money to cover that deficit. It has to come in as rates. If we don't borrow it, if we don't use retained earnings, we have to crank the rate up and get that money in some way or another. The Department of Revenue is kind of specific about that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I'm sitting
And
in
the other thing, before I forget, sorry,
Okay, go ahead, no, go ahead.
this happened last year, and it was covered by everybody, just on a smaller scale. And the point is, it's not the first time.
I mean,
I guess if I'm sitting in the audience, now I pay both, so it doesn't matter to me where it comes from, because my rate's the same. Water, sewer, doesn't matter. But for those people who's sitting in the audience who pay water rates but don't pay sewer rates, or even vice versa, because they have a well, but maybe they're on sewer, how does that impact those people? Are they paying
They're
their
only
fair
gonna be
share?
paid, they're only gonna be paid for their individual service.
But if you're combining them and you have one rate, now you're combining sewer and water essentially the same.
Yeah,
Are
but,
you not?
yes, but if you only have water, you're only gonna get billed for water. You're not gonna get billed for sewer as well. You're only,
Okay.
you're only combining the accounts so that we can get the money to cover the deficit. It's just that
this
simple.
fiscal year.
It's
Yeah,
an
but
accounting.
I guess I still
But the
don't.
fact of what you just said is correct. If you're only paying water, in the future, you're gonna, with this combined account, you will be paying some of the sewer bill.
Correct.
That's the answer to the question. The
Because there's
answer to
only
the
gonna be
question
one
is,
rate, right?
they're being combined so they can pay the sewer bill. These two accounts are being combined so that the sewer bill can be paid. That's the bottom line.
And it's gonna stay that way.
And it's gonna stay that way until the rates come up even higher, but even then, people that are only on water will still be paying, maybe the rates will be raised at some point to cover everything, but there's still the possibility that water rates could pay sewer rates, if that, we get to this situation again.
Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, I have a well, okay, I don't pay water rates, but I'm on town and I pay water rates, but I have a septic. I'm not on town sewer.
You're only gonna be billed for water.
But if there's one rate for both, unless you're still sending out two bills, for two separate accounts, you're gonna have one rate.
We still only get one bill now.
I know, but what I'm saying is, we're combining them, so we're gonna be going up on the rates to cover the deficit in the sewer, for which this person doesn't pay anything.
If I may, Sheila?
Am I? And this,
So, to address the question, is there gonna be one rate for both water and sewer? The answer to that is actually no. The Abrams
No.
Group came up with a recommendation for the rates based on whether or not the accounts are combined. Sewer is going up a lot more. Water's only got not that much of an increase. It's very, very small compared to what sewer's gonna have to go through. And again, the receipts will still be monitored to see what goes to water, what goes to sewer. The combination of the accounts really is to help with this current fiscal year's projected $300,000 deficit. Just as a background, my first week, Bob and I actually opened the first piece of mail that I got when I started here, and it was the bill for the second quarter from DCR, and it was $244,000, which was through the roof. From what I was told, Bob actually fell down into a chair when he opened it. And then just seeing that, we could tell that we weren't going to be able to pay it and then still have funds in that account after.
By means of example, that bill, okay, for every 1 gallon we billed people, we were getting charged 3.5.
okay.
So,
We just didn't have enough coming in.
and then this past Thursday, the town got the bill for the third quarter at $229,000 from the same DCR bill. So those two together way outdo the $20,000 that we have left in that account. So the combination of the account is really to deal with the current situation that we have. The rate changes that will still be a separate water rate and a separate sewer rate
Okay.
are going to fix the problem, so we're then not in this hole again next year, and we can start fixing that for the future to make sure we don't end up back there later on.
But
as
there's
well.
no intent to use any water funds to fund sewer.
Just this.
Well,
Just to get out of the hole.
Yeah, it's the money
But
that's.
we're not
already
gonna
been
change it back. We're not gonna go back to separate water and separate sewer accounts, because that's why we're combining them now, right? Or is this a one-time only? I'm not sure I understand. I guess I'm asking a question from the audience is, I'm not sure I understand, number one, why we're putting it together and keeping it there if we're still charging two rates, because we wanna pay for sewer and we can't borrow, but can't we take money out of water and just
We can't-
shift it to sewer?
We can't do that unless we combine them.
Oh,
Correct.
You have to, because we went through this with DOR, you have to
Okay.
dissolve the two enterprises and then combine them into one enterprise to do exactly what you just said. But for billing, for billing and accounting purposes, the intent is to keep them separate.
so it's really an accounting issue right now, not so much a billing issue,
Yes.
because the rates are gonna be adjusted separately depending on who you
Yes.
are.
Yep,
Okay, okay.
It's a state DOR regulation.
but the
on
state's
how we
pretty
do.
strict about stuff like that because it's an enterprise account. So you've got to make sure you cross and dot.
Okay.
I think this warrant article is one of the reasons why we wanted you all here, because we've been dealing with this now for months, and Joe's given us all kinds of, pretty sheets, and we're.
They're not pretty.
That's true. You used nice colors, that made them pretty to look at, but you're right, the data's not pretty. So, we're a little further ahead in wrapping our minds around this, but, Joe sent me an email that was, how did we get here? How in God's name did we get here? And I went back, the last time we had a sewer rate increase was back in 2015. We've been doing it pretty consistently every 3 years, actually. It was very consistent for us. And we had our hearing and we, went ahead and did it. If you look, and I don't know how many of you can see this, and I'm sure Joe would be happy to send this to anybody, but if you look, this is only from 14 to 18, and our rates are this top line, and unfortunately the blue is what's happening with what it costs us. So, now remember, this is only in the past few years, and it's very clear that, in retrospect, based on what we were seeing, but by the way, let me add a second piece to that, here's the rain data. Had we known what we were headed towards relative to weather, we should have been raising rates possibly every year. We didn't do it, and here we are.
But, so,
It's not easy to get your hands around.
oh, I know. So,
Yeah.
can I jump ahead a little bit then? With the cost of sewer,
Yes.
the way it is, and being held captive by the city of Worcester, if you will, are there any, and I'm just throwing spitballing this, are there any ideas or plans to build a treatment plant ourselves?
I believe the town looked at it previously, and it's not cost effective
At this point?
at this point.
Okay.
At the same time, professionally, I would caution you, you're kind of stuck between two public water supplies. You've got Boston in the Ware, and you've got Worcester on the other side. I think you'd have some real permitting challenges trying to be able to discharge treated wastewater.
Okay.
Just one other quick thing. If we didn't come up with a way to pay for the current deficit that we have this year, what the state has said they would do is take it out of our cherry sheet assessments. So the money that we would receive from the state that goes towards road repair, school funding,
Right.
unrestricted aid, would just be subtracted by that $450,000 that we now owe the city of Worcester. Should it happen after July 1st, before we get the cherry sheet, they actually take it out of our free cash that's certified. So it's do this, or it comes out of the bucket that affects people that aren't on water and sewer, as well as those that are on water and sewer. So it's paying the sewer bill with money that's already been collected, or paying it off with money that everyone's supposed to be benefiting from the state.
So actually, the rainwater was really the culprit here?
Say again, please?
The rainwater was the culprit? I mean, our sewer hasn't changed that much, even with the building.
Extremely wet fall.
Yeah,
Right, and Worcester, Rutland wasn't the only one. Worcester had it, Holden had it. Holden's rates are going up too.
okay. Thanks, Joe, appreciate it, thank you.
Question? No?
Keep looking at me.
Yeah?
Probably gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to move Article 13 to Article 11.
Yeah, we can, if you want,
Place it.
we'll place that, we'll make it 11.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to place Article 13, which is to see if the town will vote to combine the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Enterprise Fund pursuant to the requirements of MGL and take any action in relation thereto as Article 11 on the warrant.
Second.
Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, unanimous. So moving on, and if you'd like, we can place these together. So this is now Article 12 and 13 to place, to operate water department and to operate sewer department. Is this stay the same?
I'll make a motion to place to operate the water department as Article 12 and to place to operate the sewer department as Article 13.
Second.
Any comments? Or is happier with that order?
Yep.
Great. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Article 14, appropriate a sum of money from the PEG Access and Cable Related Fund to operate cable for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2019.
Place Article 14.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
No? All in favor?
Aye.
Article 15, Harry, would you like to take this one?
I'm gonna let Joe do that because I've been on vacation when all this was done, so I'm gonna let Joe do it.
Done.
You don't mind,
I'm reading it.
It's,
Actually, Joe, maybe one of you could remind me, because this was new to our warrant for the ATM, I think last year, and it had come on the recommendation of, well, I forget. And I was trying to remember the history of why we began to place that relative to capital purchases.
If it helps, it's the language, it's the exact language from last year, tweaked a little bit just with the years, and I copied and pasted it from the warrant.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, because we did have that on there.
And it's a two-thirds vote.
it was a 2/3.
And that is the stuff that's on here,
So that covers everything that, okay,
right here.
all right.
And
So
the,
I think it was the town council that came up with that language
Okay.
to group it. I
It
don't
was
think it was
last
us.
year, Nick.
Land fund?
Yeah.
Land
Yeah.
funds.
you'll notice here too, there's a copy in your, second letter in your packet. It lists all of the supporting information that came with the recommended, items. There is one page that didn't make it through the copy machine, unfortunately because of a jam when the rest went through, so you'll see, this double-sided page right after that sheet there, that was also meant to be in that. It's the plan for funding, the Squad 1.
And, sorry, Mike, for
Yeah.
clarification, that it does require a two-thirds vote.
Yes.
And Jeff and I were wondering, the third line from the bottom of the article,
Yeah.
towards the middle end of that line, any federal or state should be grant funds? Or
Third line.
grant funds?
It should be grant.
Okay.
So just for clarification on that, if there's no borrowing involved, it would be simple majority.
Correct. If there is borrowing involved, then it's 2/3. After the warrant is set tonight and everything finalized, legal will review and set the official vote
Okay,
count numbers.
all right,
All of
yeah.
the vote count numbers on this entire packet are subject to review by legal.
Okay.
So Joe, there is a borrowing. We placed one ballot article for the DPW purchases.
Oh, for debt exclusion? Okay.
Actually, capital exclusion, one year.
Capital exclusion.
All right, can I get a motion to place the CIPC article? Which is 15.
Make a motion to place Article 15 of CIPC budget.
Thank you.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, okay, thank you. Article 16, we talked about this, was the same thing, language from legal that indicated we need to include an article that allows us to apply for, accept, and expend any grants or donations from state or federal governments or private agencies, individuals, or institutions. Could I get a motion to place?
Motion to place Article 16.
Second.
Comments? You have a question?
Just actually back on the other one.
Oh.
So if you want to wrap this one up, and then we can go back to 15.
Okay, hold on. All in favor of 16?
Yep.
Aye.
Sorry, when you first asked us, I was caught off guard because I didn't realize that was our article coming up next, or that it was worded this particular way, but I seem to remember last year, and I understand that sometimes this is done for sake of efficiency, rolling multiple things up, but generally speaking, and I did hear feedback from last year, people like to weigh each item individually. I just want to throw that out there for your consideration, that if sometimes when articles get chunked like this, in this case it's 3 items, and when they get lumped in together, some people feel that their ability to make decisions one versus another gets taken away from them a little bit. So I would just throw that out there for consideration and potentially break them apart.
I will say that is one difference that I had when I took this language, is that last year had this chart immediately below so that you could see like backhoe 144, 450, and so on from there in the warrant article. Certainly something I can add if people want to do that. I just, in all honesty, was saving space to try to fit it all on one page. So
Actually, at the last meeting too, that came up, and some people were really actually heavily arguing, and I think we made some changes right there on the floor. So rather than just tell them right here, they still can only vote on one article. So I agree that if this can be separated out, it might go a lot quicker and easier if legal is okay with that. And we'll have a lot less people standing up and complaining.
Yeah.
I can't see legal having an issue with it because it is 3 separate purchases, or 3 separate authorizations to appropriate. Seth, correct me, well, actually, not correct me if I'm wrong, because I know, but it's the loose leaf paper there, you'll see that a lot of the stuff for the Squad 1 car is coming out of grant funding in the Holden Hospital account. Again, the DPW one is going on the ballot as a capital exclusion.
Okay.
And the water algae study will have to come out of water, or the water sewer, whatever you want to call it, account that comes towards studying why mushkapog can smell when the algae blooms. So there are different funding options for each too, so that could also help the argument if you'd like to split them. But
I'm okay with that.
So, okay, so to Joe's question, we're complicating things because Article 24 has the amount that references what will be on the ballot relative to the DPW requests, and within that is the DPW backhoe. So that is reflected in its own article, but the other two are not. So,
Technically comes from town funds.
what?
the Squad 1 technically won't come from town funds because it will come from grant and Holden Hospital.
Right. And we can't accept it as a gift because we don't have it yet.
Correct.
Joe, I'm wondering if we leave the Article 15 language as recommended by legal, but then add the article, a separate article to Carol's point, for the algae study.
Okay.
Because we have an article for DPW that includes the secondary item, or actually the primary item, from the CIPC recommendations list.
So in essence, you'd be breaking it into three already. You have 24, the one you have, and then the water. So you
Right,
end up with
and
three
then,
at the
and
end.
then fire would not have an article, but it
Right.
would be reflected in the
In
language.
this.
Now, do the
16.
Holden Hospital funds need to be appropriated?
No.
Okay, that's,
So, I mean, this is more of a courtesy thing to
Yeah.
inform the public
Yeah.
that you recommended it. So it's the same, the last 2 years, we had 2 capital items that were grant funded,
right.
that were on the capital plan that town meeting voted on, just so they could see that this is what we are doing as a town. We're purchasing a piece of equipment through grant funding, and you guys have made the recommendation.
What if they vote no?
That's their right.
It's more just of a disapproval of the action than it is a disqualification of the action, if that makes sense.
So then I wonder if we should move Article 24 to
Right.
be Article 16, and then put in Article 17 that would be the water algae study, which would come out of the water retained earnings,
Get them all together.
whatever. That way it's a chunk of
Mhm.
3.
Okay.
And then, so what's the consensus though as far as adding the fire squad one as an article?
It would be included in 15.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's not requiring any
Not
additional
requiring-
funding.
Not requiring
actions.
funding, yeah.
right.
Okay.
So move 24 to the new Article 16.
Well, so we've placed 15. We just placed 16, but we'll renumber it.
To 17.
To 17.
Yep.
Article 24.
Well, no, actually,
To
it'd be 18. And we don't have language, but could I get a motion to place an article to see if the town will vote to appropriate $18,300, and this will be from water sewer enterprise, actually, no, well, we don't know what it'll be from.
Just say water.
Yeah.
Which I think we're fine.
Yeah.
Or water retained earnings or something.
Water
I think
enterprise.
in the article, we're gonna put it as available funds, and in the motion, we'll correct it based on what we get, for the water algae study. Could I get a motion to place that as Article 16, water algae study?
'Cause I thought, are we gonna move 24 to 16? 24 to,
I don't
Can
know, it doesn't matter, yes,
I've kind of been tracking it here, so the
Okay.
numbers should be all, it'll go
it'll go fine.
CIPC, capital exclusion, algae, and then what's currently 16 is 18.
yes.
That's what's been voted on so far.
So, I'll make a motion that we place, the current article listed, Article 24, the DPW, as number 16, yes?
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
do you mind reading that one? for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
record?
So that is, so it places Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $148,266 to purchase items and services for the Department of Public Works, provided, however, that the appropriation be authorized hereunder shall be expressly contingent upon approval by the voters of the town in a Proposition 2.5, so-called capital expenditure exclusion question, in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 59, Section 21, Chapter,
C, 21C,
21C, sorry,
subsection 1.5.
subsection
I'm not laughing at you. Perfect.
1.5,
I&a half.
I&a, and M, or take any action in relation thereto.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Okay.
And remember, this is again 16, going right underneath CIPC, all in favor?
Aye.
Actually, if I can just make a quick comment on that one.
Yep.
If anyone's questioning what's in that 148,266, that's the second packet that you have here. It includes an itemized listing of what went into making up that number. When that original number went in on March 25th, that was the deadline at midnight, that ballot questions had to be submitted to the city, to the town clerk's office. And we were still gathering quotes since then, just to make sure, see if we could find a cheaper price. And we have on a couple of items, but after talking to legal and reviewing different things here, one, we're required to go with a 148, even though the quotes that we currently have are at 147, just because that's what's printed on the ballot. But legal also said that that's good for us because we forgot to include any contingency fees for things like shipping, handling, installation, things like that nature. So we are required to assess or to have on both the warrant and on the ballot as printed, and you have a copy of the ballot in your packet too. That's the last thing here, and you have a copy of the language of the ballot question on the bottom as well. So we are required to assess the full 148. If we don't use that full amount, it still gets assessed and it has to be used on things related to the language in that question, which is to the purchase of lawnmowers, backhoe accessories, or safety equipment for the Department of Public Works. So the remaining will just be put towards that. It's a similar action if there was an article on the town meeting warrant that the full amount wasn't used. That money is reserved for something related to that article's intent. It can't just be lumped back into free cash in the end.
So,
I know, yeah, go ahead.
so are those gonna be listed on the warrant so that people know what those numbers belong to for each item? You're gonna get the question anyways.
Mike
Yeah.
said he's gonna put it right
They
there.
certainly can, yeah. They
And what's
just,
gonna be the disposition of the old equipment that these things are replacing?
I can find that out too for you as well.
Well, I think that should be part of the article. I mean, we talk about this every year about doing articles. And
Yeah.
It always used to be part of the article what the disposition of the old item was.
Yeah.
And when it's not in there, then some of them reappear that you think were being replaced, but they don't get replaced. I mean, they don't get disposed of.
Yeah. I can tell you
Are you
that,
trading that in, the backhoe, John?
Backhoe's got a trade-in value, yes.
yeah.
That
That's
should
part of
be-
the quote.
But I think that should be there. It should say what it is, and here's the trade-in value, and so people know what's going on. And it just goes back what was said earlier too. That's why, and I'm just saying, used to be, I know I've been around too long probably, but it always used to be, each item was an article, so people could look at it and make their decision on it.
Yeah. Just to answer that question, so yes, the disposition, the only one that's being traded in is the backhoe. Everything else on the list we don't currently have, so it would be a new purchase. I can certainly put the itemized list on the warrant. The only concern that legal had with that, because I did ask that question too, is that in the end, the 148,266 is already on the printed ballots that will be at the election the following Monday. So that number can't be amended later on. So it's still gonna be fully assessed in the end. So I can certainly put the full number on and what's gonna happen with put new purchase, disposition, trade-in, something like that in there. It just has to be clear that in the end, the number that's on the ballot is the final number that can be
Correct.
assessed.
But
Yeah.
why wouldn't you just list the items then, each item is X amount of dollars, and as you said earlier, then you have the last, if it's a small difference, it'd be for shipping and handling, or whatever they called it.
Sure, okay.
And that still brings you to the same number.
But just to be clear, I think we've been trying to get away maybe a little bit. Actually, let me back up. Obviously, DPW has been bearing the brunt of all of our cuts for quite some time now, right? Over a decade.
I wouldn't say all of them,
A
but
lot of cuts.
they've been bearing some of them.
We're in the position where Joe is making up a list and trying to play catch up. So obviously, everything got done right relative to the capital request, right? Well over $100,000. The other items in a normal situation should have been placed under an operating budget. We can't afford them in his budget, so we're going for a capital exclusion
No, we
this
can't.
year.
I don't think, oh, I'm sorry. Well, I don't think we could put it in the operating budget. And the
Um,
operating budget really hasn't changed in a lot of years.
No, that's my point. Yeah, so for example, the police department is finally getting cruisers put in the operating budget for the first time in as long as I've been doing this. Yep.
So the long-term goal, I think, would be at some point to get,
A budget where you were able to make a purchase that was a $3,000 item needed for one of your larger pieces and not have to go through this process for it because your budget and the levy is able to handle it and we're just not there.
Correct.
I understand what you're saying, but this lump is we're trying to outfit DPW appropriately so they can do their work. So we've got the big itemized, the smaller items listed for you, but I don't know that giving the residents the requirement to have to vote for each small under 10,000 item was gonna be valuable.
Well, I don't see what, you're gonna vote for a, no, I don't have a number right in front of me. We used to. I guess we don't have to, but.
My only other question.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it for them, I'm not saying that at all, I'm just saying, you're gonna get the questions anyways, like
Yep.
Harry just said. People
My
are gonna
only-
ask.
My only concern with it would be and I'd have to check with legal on this, whether the town has to approve the exact language that's in the question that's on the ballot. So rather than saying to approve 144, 450 for a backhoe in the override, the language that's on the exclusion question.
On
They
the
might need
ballot.
to match what's exact on the ballot.
The
The ballot's a total amount.
Where we've generally gotten caught out is being too specific and something ends up changing in the spec. So I think that would be our concern, right? That's where we've gotten in trouble with that. All right, I've lost track. We had a motion and a second to place 16.
Yeah, which is the old 24.
Right, which is the old 24. I don't think we voted on that yet. There was a request from FinCom for language that will include and disposition of any related equipment. Is that correct? Tom? Include the phrase "and disposition of any."
Or just show what's gonna happen to each item that's being, if it's not being replaced, then it can't be disposed of, but if it's, something's being replaced,
The backhoe will be traded. That's
Yeah, the backhoe will be traded.
Simple as that.
simple as that.
Yeah,
Just stick it in there.
yeah. We could put that.
Okay.
Or we can do an information sheet.
11 or 12,000 on the trade.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my memory.
You don't have to number that, you just say that's gonna, the amount is this much includes trade into the old unit.
Yeah.
Good number.
Yeah, not bad.
For a 20-year-old machine?
All
They
in
actually
fa-
want it too.
all in favor of placing Article 16?
Museum.
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, and we're gonna look into that language to make sure we're covering our bases relative to disposition. Okay, so we're back to.
I'll make a motion to place as Article 17
Make it up.
There it is, 16.
No,
it's an Article 17, correct?
correct, yeah.
To fund per the CIPC's fiscal year 2020 recommendations, a water algae study from available funds with water retained earnings, or some with water,
Will work,
in the water, sewer, or something.
Second.
Any more discussion? So again, that's the CIPC's, I believe your second highest number of points for this year, recommendation. And we'll be funding that from retained earnings. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Moving on, so we've already placed what is now Article 18, that's grants. And we're gonna move on, what's now 19?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we
16.
changed,
You're
16
gonna go
was
back to
24, then 17 is new. So now what about the current 16 and 17? Did I miss something?
16 is now 18.
16 is 8.
So 16 is now 8, okay.
And we had already
missed something.
voted to
Okay.
place that one.
Okay, good,
And then it goes numerically down from there unless any other
gotcha,
changes happen.
okay.
Article 19, what is now 19, changing from 17, to authorize Board of Selectmen to enter into contracts for goods and services in excess of 3 years under 30B.
Motion placed.
Second.
Comments?
Just a thing on the, so the 30B allows with approval, the board and I to negotiate contracts over 3 years, and the reason that you tend to have a better price with a longer contract. So for example, this doesn't fall under the purview of 30B, but the electrical contract that we just signed with Constellation, we were able to get a better rate because we were able to go for a 4.5-year contract rather than a 3-year contract. And this is pretty common practice across any cities and towns, that if the longer you go, the better financially you are in the contract you're negotiating.
Comments? All in favor of placing?
Aye.
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 Unanimous? We are on, we're on top of page 4, so what was 18 is now 20. This is to place the article that allows us to appropriate all Chapter 90 bond issue funds for DPW
So
town road
moved.
repair.
Second.
Comments?
I'm sorry, I was,
We're about to place Chapter 90. Do you have any concerns?
no,
350 in Chapter 90?
yes.
Yes.
The only thing, some of that money will need to go towards the home facet design work, but that's the only real change I want to call out.
But again, $350,000 in change from the state for Chapter 90 for the upcoming fiscal year.
Did you say 350 or 315?
350, 350. Yeah.
And some will have to go to the tip design, is that?
Right.
And as was stated at the finance committee, some of that this year will also be going to gravel purchase because we had a couple gravel roads wash out over the winter time. So rather than just straight up asphalt paving, it'll also go toward gravel road repair.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, what was 19, Article 21, to place the article regarding provision, Mass General Law, Chapter 44, 53E and a half, regarding our revolving funds, including Safe Place, Board of Health, Planning Board, Recreation, Animal Control, and Tax Title.
So moved.
Second. Comments?
These spending limits are set forth by the statute and approved by the accounting department prior to them coming to you guys here. They fall under the different requirements of 53E and a half, saying that a certain revolving account can't spend over X amount of dollars depending on what its use is and what its designation is as. And last year, the only difference between this and that is there's some funding numbers. The state, through the Municipal Modernization Act a couple of years ago, allowed for increases, and they better reflect what our revolving accounts actually take in. So those have been adjusted to that. Also in last year's warrant, tax title was forgotten to be placed on it for the revolving accounts, but since it fell under the scope and intent of the article, it was allowed to fund this year. So those have been corrected in this year's warrant article.
I have a question.
Yep.
On the COA, I
Yes.
went to a meeting today, and they were talking about, she said that she had spoken to everybody and pretty much got approved to get, I thought, on the ballot, on the town meeting, to have new computers and a copier. And I don't see anything on here. Would that go in something like this, or is that a separate article, or am I whistling Dixie?
I think we pushed it.
The board at their last meeting voted to move that to the fall town meeting rather than the spring town meeting.
Okay.
There's a few items that we pushed.
We had to,
Okay.
we're not sure we have enough money. The estimates were a little high too, and I think she still needed to talk to Paul,
CMD.
right? To CMD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is on our radar though, and that is a goal for us to have.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any more comments about the revolving funds? All in favor?
Aye.
Please. Article, we're now on the top of page 5. What was Article 20 is now 22. Fire Department. Seth, would you like to speak to us about this?
Sure. Basically, the state of Massachusetts, police officers and firefighters have a mandatory retirement age of 65. Cities and towns have the option to do a town meeting vote and petition the state to accept that. Up to the age of 70 is the maximum you can go to. This has been done in several towns and several communities in Worcester County. Most recently, it was done in the town of Ocam 4 years ago to keep the fire chief on for a couple more years. It's also being done this year in the town of Lancaster to keep a fire officer on for an additional 2 years. Currently, we have a combination of full-time staff and on-call staff. This individual, Dave Williams, has been our deputy chief for the last 2.5 years. He's got 42 years of firefighting experience, not only from the town of Rutland. He came from the town of West Boylston, and he was deputy fire chief up in town up in New Hampshire. He's approached me to stay on till he turns 67. I felt that the department needed this person to stay on due to the staffing requirements that we have. I can't be here at every minute of every day. He is our highest call volume person as far as coming back to calls after hours on nights and weekends. So I'm looking to keep him on for 2 additional years until we can come up with a better solution to fill that gap.
So you're changing the policy, not just that for the one position, right? Isn't it? But are we
Each-
voting for the town to change the policy?
No, just for one
Just for that
person, I
Oh, it's for
suppose.
one person?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's ever done again for a police officer or a firefighter, it has to be done again.
Yeah, it has to be made on an individual basis, and it has to be approved by both houses of the state legislature every individual time.
Wow.
And signed by the governor, and it's a whole, they treat it as a home rule
It's a
petition.
private bill. Right.
Yeah. We can give them a copy of it so we can frame with the governor's signature on it. It'll be fine.
It'll change in the future as people continue to get older.
Could I get a motion to place Article 22, fire?
Make a motion to place Article 22 for the fire department.
Second.
Any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, that'll be a majority vote. Moving on, what was 21, we're now on to 23. This is a planning board bylaw subcommittee request to make a change to the town zoning bylaw, and I believe this is a correction, correct? Would you like to speak to this, Dick? No?
Doing fine.
We're doing fine. All right, so there were references in the bylaw to industrial district and multifamily district, and they need to be consistent with the zoning map, and so this is a correction.
Motion to place Article 23.
Second.
Any comments?
Just that these two zoning locations are not listed or recognized in the zoning map or any of the other zoning bylaws. So they're actually in it's one type of residential and another type of commercial or something like that. They fall under different other designations. So since they're just kind of taking up place in the bylaws, it's just to get them out of there so the bylaws actually reflect what's actually being done by the town currently.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Article 23 placed. I apologize to everybody, we tried to print this last minute, realizing it wasn't on here and had no luck. So we're gonna move on to placing an Article 24 that is not present, and that is the creation of a bylaw committee. And we need to get that approved at town meeting, and Mike, you would like to read it?
Yes. It's actually a 3-page document, so I won't read the entirety of it, but what the article will read is similar to what the planning board submitted to see if the town will vote to amend the town's bylaws by adding a section, bylaw committee, to be as set forth in the handout entitled May 11th, 2019 Annual Town Meeting Bylaw Committee, also on file with the town clerk, and to authorize the town clerk to assign an appropriate numbering to this bylaw in order to be in compliance with the numbering format of the town bylaws or act in any other manner in relation thereto. The town Board of Selectmen voted to create an ad hoc bylaw committee tasked with codifying all existing bylaws, once the codification was done and approved by town meeting, to then work towards the modernization to see if there's any bylaws that were, one, in confliction with each other, or two, any out-of-date practices that are listed there, and those recommendations would come after. So this would allow them to be an official town set committee to continue their work forward. And the official language of the bylaw, again, will be filed with the city clerk's office after final legal review, which is pending. We should have that by the end of the week. And once that is there, I'll send that out to everyone who's here.
2 quick questions. 2/3 vote or majority?
Majority vote, because this is not a zoning bylaw. So that would be the other difference from what you see in Article now 23, 4, 21. Is that since it's a regular since it's a regular town bylaw, it's a simple majority vote.
And who are the members going to be appointed by?
Yeah.
Planning board of zoning only.
Yeah, planning board of zoning. What was that? By the Board of Selectmen. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to give a little more background, this is something that we're trying to complete that Margaret had initially suggested as part of our structural issues. We unfortunately had a planning board bylaw subcommittee that started taking on general bylaws, I think just because of a vacuum, and that this was a correction to that. Peter Crane has been really instrumental in that, in his first process of codification, which we might see that piece come up in the fall as part of this new bylaw committee's first real charge. I know he's in the back on camera, and I guess he's not coming out, right, Peter? Okay. If you had any comments, he wanted to make sure it was getting placed. Could I get a motion to place the bylaw committee?
Motion to place the bylaw.
Second. Any comments? All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Unanimous. All right. Moving on to Article, it was 22, now we're on to 24. 25, sorry. I knew I'd screw that up. So this is the Agricultural Commission. See if the town will vote to create an open space preservation fund for the purpose of funding the acquisition of underdeveloped or lightly developed properties within the town of Rutland. I think there's a couple of AgCom committee members here. Did anybody want to speak to this one, to the placement of it?
Just positively of it, we just think it's something that the town really needs to consider and start the process of, because the opportunities have come before the town to save virtually 61A properties or other. We kind of wanted to have it a general topic to do it. And Holden has done something similar to this in the last few years to do that. They've had similar difficulties and never had the process or the vehicle to say, hey, it's a great idea, we gotta come up with some money in a short period of time. That's why we put two of them together.
And the rules for agricultural commissions, management of these lands has recently changed, right? It was changed in 2016 and it's just been activated, and I know there's been some sessions that you've gone to, learning sessions.
Yes, but we were established early enough that we don't have to change any of our
Oh, nice.
Correct. Yeah.
bylaws, and we're gonna notify.
To this morning I got it. So.
See, we notified you, right? So we were gonna change that as in an article here, but we had learned from the Ag Commission group, the
Okay.
state committee that stated that we didn't need to do that, so we're covered in that end to do it. And then the second article that's coming up afterwards, we'd like to get this fund started. And obviously, if there was more funds available than 500, we would ask for more, but under the circumstances, we're happy to get the dollar started. Just
Okay, I'm just
in
gonna stick
general.
with 25, and I think one follow-up question, I don't know how you felt, Leah, I felt like maybe this was a nice way to end the meeting, on kind of an up note, something was moving in a positive direction, but if you have a strong feeling about not placing this last, being the moderator as well as a member of the Ag Commission, this would be the time to bring that up.
I do whatever you tell me to do.
No?
Yes,
No,
yes,
I-
dear.
pretty much it's-
That's on camera.
Pretty much exactly the opposite.
It doesn't matter to me,
Okay, you sure? Okay,
right?
Can I ask a quick question about that? You're talking about getting funds to purchase essentially, and now you're talking $500. I mean, number one, where's the town ever gonna get real money? $500 is, why even bother? I mean, I understand your reasoning, and maybe it could be put into one article even, but it seems that we need some kind of vehicle to figure out how we're ever really gonna get money for this. And maybe this isn't the forum, but there's several of these things. What is the proper forum to start asking people to donate to certain funds and
I can
whatnot?
answer that if that's okay with you. The original request was for $5,000, and we just don't have the free cash to fund it now, and I didn't want to put it off to the fall, because if we're creating this, I'd like to get this funded on because I think it's something, like Randy said, I think it's something that the town would benefit from and would go from there after speaking with a couple of them commission members who stop by the office every now and then. We wanted to make sure that something got on the ballot to start it, so that we can come up with that plan to see how we can get the full funds later on, and those conversations are ongoing and will continue to go on with the inclusion of the Ag Commission. Because you're saving me an email that I was going to be sending in a couple of weeks asking to meet to discuss that, Randy.
So, you know, essentially, when we started talking about this 6 or 8 months ago, we were under the impression there was gonna be more available funds to go in. The town of Holden initially did it with $100,000, was their first year. And then it was $50,000 thereafter, and I think their cap was at $250 or $500. They had some magical number in there that it wouldn't grow, because Holden, obviously their land values are a little bit higher. And in turn, they've all wanted to buy it and save this one piece of land, and they've never had funds to do it. We were only gonna do one of these articles, and we felt as a committee that we felt it was useless to set up this open space fund essentially without any money in it. If it came to $1, Dickie Williams was gonna give us $1 to physically do it. I mean, it was that, the 500 is irrelevant. It's like opening a checking account. If we don't have anything there, we don't have it in a checking
It
account.
makes sense.
So, our goal is to do,
And if I may, I think part of it is with the establishment of the fund, the Ag Commission is then available, it opens the possibility for the Ag Commission to seek grant funding and donations and everything that can get deposited into a fund that then is
Gotcha. Makes sense, total
specified
sense.
for use.
Particularly when some grant programs require a matching
Right.
amount too, so that would help go toward that.
it's gonna help the town in being able to check off some of those boxes in some of the grant applications
Correct.
as well.
Yeah.
So we're doing this for you.
So this article we're talking about right now, this is just like to set the administrative part of it up, so
Yes.
it's there.
Yeah.
The second one, is it putting $500 or $1,000 in there?
500 to start. That's like just an amount to put in there so that we can figure that out later on.
Hold on, let's do the first one. Just one question regarding, I think, Carol's point. Does the CIPC have any feeling that as part of this process, we should take a look at our financial management policies and include this as one of the funds to proactively put a percentage of free cash in every fall? I know that's
Probably
an-
something that takes a little bit of thought, but
Right.
I think the other question was, and I might have been answered, I just want to clarify, that this can be funded by multiple sources, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be town appropriated funds, it could be grant, it could be fundraising activity,
Yes.
it could be all of the above.
Yes.
And will there be a cap on the amount that the fund
Not on
can
this one.
receive?
No.
Should there be a cap on that?
6 or 7 million.
I was thinking
Yeah.
13 myself.
I think we would be hamstringing ourselves to make any kind of a cap. I mean, obviously not to take out of town funds. We're not gonna get $6 million out of town funds.
Well,
But, you know.
I think Joe's point, and I'm not sure if this is Holden's reasoning, but the cap was because the agricultural commission will be administering this money, correct? And administering the purchases made with the money. So there might be other funds that have other purchase opportunities. Maybe it's specific to conservation, whereas this is more agricultural preservation. That's probably where it came from, so I don't know if that's what you were getting at, Joe. And I don't know what the cap should be.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a number of reasons, that among them, yeah.
But that could be something really on the next town meeting that came up of where this monies might come, if there were caps, or who might be administering.
Well, I would think you'd want to
You
do
know.
it as part of establishing the process, but that's just me.
Then we should talk about who gets to spend the money, basically.
AgCom.
You know, but with somebody else, if we don't have a specific cap, you know, I don't want Randy spending it all. You know, look at him. Sorry, Randy. You were making faces at me. But it just seems that there should be some other oversight if we're gonna have, I mean, all of a sudden, somebody gives $6 million. You never know.
That's right.
And, you know,
Are you saying that this would just be then up to the Ag Commission to spend? This would have to come before town meeting to spend the money, wouldn't it?
that's my question.
It should. It's not like the RDIC.
If it's got anything to do with 61A, of course, everybody's gonna be involved.
But that's right to purchase, that's a little bit
Yeah.
different. You know, to your question, the new legislation that went along with agricultural commissions in the state, it's giving them quite broad powers, actually.
So
And
if there's
do we
a
want to?
a piece of land that comes up for sale, they can make an offer just like a regular buyer.
Yeah.
That's what it's for, correct? Unless it's 61A.
Yes, and they administer the funds that they
Right.
have in hand.
Wait a minute now, wait a minute. So if that committee just wants a piece of land somewhere, they can make an offer on it to buy it without going to town meeting?
I mean, Randy's shaking his head, and honestly, Randy, I've read the legislation a few
Hey,
times.
if you're
It's,
giving me the power, I'll take it.
I thought they had,
I'm asking.
it did say they have the right to purchase property.
It's available tomorrow.
yeah, it's pretty broad. It's management of the
500.
property and,
But my question would be like, if they purchase the property, where's the money gonna come to manage it?
Out of that same account.
But what if it's not
Well,
there?
yeah, what if it's not there all of a sudden? But I do think they can just buy land. No,
I think,
I don't think so.
I think there was some information, right, relative to all this that was suggesting that the agricultural commissions come up with a process by which you would be going through this, right, relative to management, long-term care, whether you have some kind of endowment, right? I'm sure, I assume that's sort of on the radar.
Yes, on the radar.
Can that be on the radar, though, if we're voting for a I mean, being on the radar isn't exactly real specific,
No.
so.
Well, so I think the question is, do we place a cap similar to the revolving fund caps on this for now? It can be amended, it can be increased, decreased, whatever. I think we just don't know tonight what that cap would be.
Do you know Holden has a policy on how this, they must have it, they already looking at
In regards to what, purchasing?
purchasing the land? Is their ag commission the ones that are gonna?
I don't believe,
That was prior to.
I don't believe they have the ability to purchase land. There is money coming from, if the town has a 61A parcel to do it, it comes before the selectmen. The selectmen have to appoint it. but they don't necessarily take the option and give it to the Ag Commission to say, hey, go out and try to buy this 2-acre piece of property for $200,000 and hold it. I don't believe
I
it
think it'd
comes
be
through.
worthwhile to see if they have a policy in place.
I don't believe they do.
I
I can
know.
ask.
Wow.
Is it part of the bylaw? Do they have anything on that?
When I read this, this doesn't say that it gives the Ag Commission the power to do that, unless this refers
Well,
to something
we're not
else.
going by this, we're going by what the state
SL.
actually
Right.
gave them the authority.
No, I
I
know,
thought
but
Holden
this
had a
article
whole-
doesn't say that.
No,
This-
I know.
Ranking system to then make recommendations to use funds to purchase.
They do.
But I don't know who they make the recommendations to. Is it to the select board or is it to town meeting? Because town meeting is not timely enough
Yeah,
in
that
a
would
lot
be
of
enough,
these
No, it goes to the
instances.
selectmen.
And it wasn't, so the Holden ranking system, they had a ranking system that they would look at any parcel that was coming up or had come up. And so it wasn't a guarantee that if there was a 30-acre parcel of land, they would rank it and say like, based on their score, whether or not it seemed like a valuable investment for the agricultural / town to preserve. It wasn't a guarantee.
There's a point system of proximity to the school or water and sewer, or, you know, what it could be used for, future use, or things like that.
Sure, can I answer? Tom, just to answer your question, the article wouldn't be what would allow the Ag Commission to purchase land. This gives them money to do it off of a state law that gave them the right to do it. Right now, the Ag Commission has a budget of $250.
Correct.
So this would give them that funding to use that authority that the state legislature has authorized agricultural commissions to do, if that makes sense.
There's no reference in this Article 25 to that.
So MGL Chapter 40, 8L, a municipality that accepts this section, which we have, allows an agricultural commission, unless otherwise restricted by law, to buy, hold, manage, license, or lease land for agricultural purposes.
So
So you include,
we're required, we already fall under the purviews of that law, so that's why there's no reference.
So we really need to have some policy in place where they outline how that's gonna be managed.
Yeah, and it's actually part of the legislation that they should conduct research and prepare agricultural related plans, including comprehensive land plans, which clearly is a step in the right direction if, to Carol's point, somebody hands you $6 million, which would be lovely.
It happens.
yeah, you get a bequeath.
In the state.
And the commission may receive gifts, bequests, or devices of personal property or interests in real property as described, et cetera, et cetera.
Can we ask where this language came from? Was it drafted off somebody else's?
It was submitted to the office by the Agricultural Commission.
But legal.
Was there a model
Legal
that,
looked at it.
Legal
So this is off
legal
of
hasn't
Holden's,
seen the
right?
document yet, they'll
So-
see it tomorrow.
We sent it to you from Holden, and in all honesty, we asked for recommendations if it was right or not. We didn't realize it was being placed before we got an opinion from town administrator.
does Holden's reference,
So, I mean, we weren't certain if we were doing it right, and we didn't think we should go to council without, we asked your,
I mean, I didn't see an issue with it, that's why,
So-
yeah.
hey, we'll
No.
take the credit, but
No, this is going right, this is fine.
Yeah.
They'll tweak the language.
So I think
we personally expected that we were gonna hear an answer back a few weeks ago and say, hey, guys, this looks good, we're gonna send it this way, or we offer a suggestion of changing this just from Mike more than town council.
Okay.
Okay,
Is-
no.
Correct me if I'm wrong, correct
No,
me?
there were just questions of the cart and the horse, and this would be the process, because you're a town entity, so unlike a resident petition article where they wouldn't get legal review, this was gonna get legal review no matter sort of how you submitted it.
We expected to have it, Mike's opinion,
Right.
and then possibly legal before it even
Oh,
got placed.
Oh, okay. My apologies,
No.
I didn't realize that.
And that just, maybe that's me, but that's.
no,
So, just to circle back to whether to cap it or not, I know one of my concerns with the cap is I see pros to it, and my concern is given how much farmland Rutland still has, if there's multiple properties that say we're able to get a $6 million gift, and there's multiple properties that are coming up within a short amount of time, that if we were if Holden has a $500,000 cap and we have a $500,000 cap and there's multiple properties that are coming up within 60 or 90-day time period, we're not gonna have $500,000 again and again and again to go after, potentially, if they ranked properly, go after multiple properties. So just knowing how much open space there still is in town, that was the question as to how to decide a cap. I don't know if CIPC has any insight into this.
It's the first night we're hearing on
Yeah.
it, so I can't say that we do at the moment.
Right.
I mean, I have opinion, but,
Yeah.
from an official standpoint.
Yeah.
Cycling back just for a second, I agree with Leah as far as the cap and as far as timing. Just perhaps, and I don't know if we can do this with the legal language you just read off, but we might have some input, is that agriculture would do all their research. Something came up, there's bidding on it, and it turns out great, and we have the money, just to get a final approval with the select board, so that there's other eyes on it. That's, instead of just, the agriculture commission thinking, this is good, that's that. I would assume it would still go through the select board. And I would personally, as a resident, would like to see that.
So couldn't you put something in there about management contingent on approval of policies and procedures or something submitted to select board or something like that? Just so it has something to say there'll be guidelines in place.
The legislation ends with a sentence that notes that the treasurer of the municipality shall be the custodian. However,
Well, that's just because the treasurer holds any money.
Holds
Right.
any money, yeah.
but relative to a purchase,
But there should be some
yeah.
policies and some kind of,
Unless there's a policy in
management.
place that kind of acts similar to how the RDIC manages the Heights property, if that makes sense.
But there's a statute for the RDIC.
yeah,
Right.
because we still have to vote on anything. I don't know that we have to vote on anything for the Ag Commission.
But essentially, if it's 61A parcel comes available, it's offered to the town of Rutland. It gives them 120 days, I believe.
But it's not the town, it's getting offered to you and you're gonna buy
Right.
and manage
But
it.
the first
Oh,
option goes to the town.
Yeah,
The town has the right to assign it,
Right.
and they could assign it to Rutland Conservation Commission if they wanted to, or the Land Conservancy here in town. They could do it to Quabbin Land Trust, they can do it to the Ag Commission. So at that point, they can assign it to us, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, they could appoint it to us, and they could put in that thing that if you choose to do anything with this, you gotta come back with our approval. even
see,
though
my
it's our
concern
money.
isn't acquisition, my concern is maintenance and like,
Right.
what's gonna happen with that property and the taxes and whether it's gonna be farmed and who's gonna farm it and how the funding's gonna be managed and all that's gonna be taking place. If you're
Because it is
taking into
agriculture.
inventory property, you're gonna be responsible to maintain it. And
But
there's gotta be
you gotta have
policies
money in
in
this
place.
account too, in order to do what
Yeah,
you're
so
talking
that's my
about.
concern, not acquiring it, but maintaining it.
So, Randy, does the ag have the authority to lease the property out for farming? And that creates income? Is that part of,
That's what other towns do, yes.
Yep.
okay?
It's part of the statute.
Okay. I guess if we're using, I guess when it comes to everything else, regardless of what we buy it with the town's approval. So I guess I have a little bit of a problem personally, where we're putting 250, 500, wherever the cap is in there, and not having town approval approve the purchase of the property. That's a problem I have, because everything else, for the most part, goes before the town. Why is this an exception?
It's partly because of timing, Harry,
Yeah?
I think, because often 61A,
And I'm
In
not familiar
particular.
with that.
61A is the reduced in taxes between farm value and residential
Okay.
value typically, or high and best use, right?
Yeah.
So they give you, we'll use this as an example down here at Davis's place, right?
Yeah,
Jimmy Susi goes to buy it, right? $525,000 or whatever. These are just numbers that I remember, right, wrong, and different. $525,000. He's got 120 days, I believe, to, it has to be offered to the town because it was in 61A purposes, right?
okay.
The town can't even pull a town meeting off in 120 days easily, determine whether they want to do it, can they afford it, where's the money coming from, and have a town meeting all in 120 days. Sometimes we, as Ag Commission, have never been even told about these until about 110 days into this thing that never, we may hear about it, but it's never been thrown our direction to give an opinion of it.
Okay.
In turn, you need some form of action that you gotta act quicker than a town meeting or a town vote can physically do. I think is some of the challenges that go on with a 61A. Now, just, and we did this, if you notice, this is under open space preservation. It's not just agricultural open space. It could be a piece of parcel that's undeveloped that's not under 61A. That's a different game, okay? So, but timing is still probably critical there. Is that fair to?
Yeah. I mean, the only comment I would make to that is, I mean, we're talking 6 months. It's not like, and you can pull a town meeting off in 6 months. It's more of a case of where you're appropriating the money from. And you can even pull off a ballot question in that period of time to make it happen if the town really felt strongly about it.
Is this something we may want to put off?
Town meeting only takes 2
More
weeks. Once
discussion?
you've got 2 weeks to post a town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is ample time to go through the red tape that you have to go through.
Do we
It's more of a
want
case
to?
of coming up with the money.
Do we want to have a rush town meeting with the costs involved in that? With something that if we could have a trusted, appointed by the select board committee and a select board, do we wanna go through that kind of expense?
Well, I mean,
And only the people who really care are gonna go to that kind of a special town meeting. And a lot of times, the people who care not to see it happen, unfortunately.
I think a lot of issues got raised. I don't know that 61A would be our concern, because to Randy's point, there is a process in place for how a 61A property gets released, and whether the town takes advantage of it. I will take a little bit of issue as to, I don't know why the AgCom feels like they weren't acknowledged, because I think we're talking back to Don Doteal days. We had a policy with a list of town groups, agencies, committees, commissions that were to be notified, and we're supposed to respond as part of our 61A sort of checkoff process. That's neither here nor there anymore, but I do think Davis is a good example of an amount of money, right? So we were looking at $500,000 there. That's a question. I think the other question too, and I guess we didn't notice it, this does say open space preservation. It doesn't say agricultural preservation. It could. That might make it a different animal. We could also place a cap on it, knowing that there are structural concerns, the fact that the AgCom doesn't yet have some of this in place relative to management. And it's something that's suggested to them in the legislation, and then revisit it. And if the cap had to be raised, we would raise the cap, similar to the way some of the revolving funds have had their caps raised when we knew we needed, more space there. So I think we've got some options. I don't know if the option is to throw it away. We have been talking about this for a long time. Amherst is holding 2,000 acres in agricultural preservation. And I know it's Amherst, but it's doable.
Well, you could at least wait until you get opinion from town council. It must not be the first time they've done it.
Right.
And they're gonna know whether the language is correct, and
Yep.
Mike can ask those questions. And if it's not appropriate, then you take no action. You throw it to the fall. If town council says that you need to do something different.
You're talking about a cap right now, though, but you don't need a cap, because unless we vote to put money in there, they only get $500 to start with, so.
Well, but
No,
somebody
no.
could donate $6
They
million
could,
tomorrow,
but
so
that's
then they
money
gotta
that's
do
donated
that.
for that specific purpose, and that's not coming from the tax.
And who's gonna manage it?
Well, they
Maybe I
are,
have friends.
right at the moment, they are.
If it's donations, you might not have to cap it.
Right, if it's
If
donations.
it's town
right.
funds, then maybe
Town
at a
funds,
certain
good
point,
point,
you don't
yeah.
cap it, but if
Well,
someone
you
wants to
don't
give
put
it,
them
you
in
can.
there.
I think
You
the
don't
question
put
that
them in.
comes up is, if you're getting a donation that's that size, does it go to one specific board or commission to manage, or are you looking at something that's a little bit broader? Because it's possible that, Amherst, and I don't know enough about it, has multiple funds to do different things.
Yeah,
Maybe
but that
one of them is
depends on the
wetlands
person donating.
conservation and.
If the person donating could say, I wanna give it to them, that's it.
Well,
That's all,
this-
that's the only place it's
You'll
going.
have to go to this fund.
So
Yeah,
I
you
think
have
the
to
opinion
donate
is
it,
most
right?
people
She's saying
think
if
it's a
they
good
donate to
idea.
the
So
town,
my
that's
opinion
all
is to
from
have
all
town
of
council
then
give
what they
you an
would,
opinion
No.
some of
and to
that too, then
proceed
they wouldn't.
in accordance with town council.
You have to
Okay.
vote on that.
I mean, I'm
And the
just,
taxpayer.
No, it's good
it's
feedback.
not me to tell you, but that's where I'd go.
To be turned around in 2 weeks, you saying?
Well, town council has to
Where-
review these
Yeah,
anyway,
they
right?
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So,
kinda-
I think the question is, are we comfortable with the language, and do we want to try to put a cap based on what we're hearing? And this is all relative to what council says. Obviously, if the cap is a non-issue, then we wouldn't have a cap.
I'm comfortable replicating Holden's wording if that's where you pulled it from.
So why don't you just put a cap on the amount of money that the town has to fund this? If they get $1 million from the public fine,
No more
the town stops capping it at $500,000, or stops donating to it.
We're stopping at 500 right now.
Well, no, it's.
No,
This
he's
isn't
saying
me
something
starting,
else.
this is
No,
starting.
you're right,
That's
you're right. It is. That's what we're stopping, because unless we vote more, that's it.
I don't know the reasoning behind the town of Holden's capping, but you gotta remember, the town of Holden does things a little different than the town of Rutland. They set money aside in the town of Holden for the fire department. Don't hold me on these numbers, but they put, whatever, $50,000 a year into a capital expense for fire trucks every year. So they tried to put a number in here, and if that's never used, I think is their general intention of not putting, go to $50 million because no property came available in Holden, or there's far less open space in Holden or 61A than anybody else, is I think the reason that the town of Holden did that. Where we may be a little, I don't ever see the town of Rutland giving us $50,000 a year, okay, as a capital line expense in the current time.
I personally, I don't see a problem with the cap. I see a problem with maintenance and the language
I
and legal
agree.
counsel, making sure we're doing it.
We're covered.
Yeah. A cap is here and there. I mean, we're not gonna put millions and millions, and if somebody wants to donate it, then God bless them.
You say, people in this room may not.
No, I know.
But anyone can petition an article.
Right.
Let's put $100,000 this year into this capital fund from free cash, and it can pass. So you gotta be careful of,
Right.
how things can happen.
But they can do anything on the floor,
Sure.
so we're at the mercy
But if you have a
of the
cap,
residents.
they're prevented from doing certain
Yeah.
things, so.
Yeah, but they're the ones that are gonna vote in the cap, right? So they'll change the
No,
cap.
different-
Change
Depends
the
the voter,
cap.
you got different voters out
Yeah.
there that
No, I
vote
know.
on different
Change the
things,
cap.
so.
I'm hearing a cap on municipal funds, right? That's what Skip suggested, to
Mhm.
Joe's point, to essentially prohibit somebody from making a motion on town floor that would take all this money from stabilization. Or-
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Okay. Yes, now, we don't know if the language is reasonable, so this will be if we're placing this article, we're placing it with the language as presented, based on legal review, and with additional language that will cap the municipal ability to add to the fund. I have no sense of how that's gonna get structured or how that's gonna look. Does anybody have a number?
Randy, in your,
50,000 now from the town, from everybody else, they give them billions, but.
do you have any numbers from your research?
Holden was 500,
500.
500,000?
I believe.
Yes.
Should be half.
But now, I'm gonna ask, point of order, where this was submitted by the Ag Commission, can you make changes to our suggestion?
Yeah, we're placing the articles, yeah.
The way the
This is not
statute's
a
written
petition.
is that, yeah,
It's
since.
not a petition, it's just submitted article.
Yeah.
No.
Since-
These were the changes that I wanted like 2 weeks ago, not
No, I'm just,
tonight, that's all.
a petition is different than an article.
Yeah,
This
because
way.
the board sets the warrant, the board can change whatever is submitted from town agencies,
Then does our name stay on it?
because you were the original submission, yeah.
So, but if someone says to us, if you choose to put a number on it, whatever the number is, the people could come to us in town and say, well, why'd you put X number on it? And that's really, we'd have to,
It would say AdCom/Selectmen or something like that, so it'd be added to
Just-
the end.
clarification.
And you wouldn't get support from the board without it, I guess would be the answer. You want the board to support it.
Well,
They don't have to place it at all, right?
I mean, I think the goal would be to try to come up with something cooperative that everybody's happy with,
No,
because
I
it's
just-
good and for everybody, for all the
Trying
right
to
reasons.
understand the process.
Yeah.
I think 500,000 is more than we need in the town of Rutland, but the other way you can look at it too is land value is only going up on open space. You didn't have very many acres down here and that was 525. Okay, that was 60 acres, 50 acres.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of open space there, that potentially came up. So really, this is a number that's gonna have to grow with time, potentially. If you put a number in there to protect the town now, you could probably do less, but realistically, I don't think a 500 number is out of reach, that we may never get there because of funding. It may take us 20 years to do that, but just, if it makes you feel more comfortable of security of Joe's exact same, well, no, if, I don't ever see anybody doing that for the floor, but I understand where Joe's coming from, but if somebody came in and said, hey, take all your free cash and it's $1 million and put it over there because we like the Ag Commission people now, then this is protecting you. But realistically, the town affording $500,000 and actually not using it, I mean, in the last history of years, we've used an awful lot, we had the potential to buy an awful lot of property that has been lost. Not that none of us want to have kept it, town-wise, it's because how are we gonna come up with the cash? And that's the short of it. So, if anything, that number should really be bigger with intentions of never getting there. Is my opinion. I mean, you got a 100-acre parcel, tomorrow's behind the Rutland Sportsman's Club come up, right? That was 100 and 200 acres that came up. You know, that wouldn't even fall into 500. 500 would be your deposit, you know?
And that's where I think I struggle with, I can totally understand the protection of the cap, but I struggle with putting a cap because we know we have large parcels and a number of large parcels.
The
So-
municipal cap, though, is different
Well,
than a cap
that-
cap.
Right,
So-
right.
That's what I was getting at, it's what the town can afford to donate, anybody can, they could
Right, and
have
that's,
$20 million if they want from all the others, but the town has gotta draw a line somewhere. I mean, let's be real, I gotta live within a budget, the town has to try to live within some sort of budget, instead of just taxing everybody right out of town.
I guess from my perspective, the budget's important, but we get funded, or supposedly we're to get funded in the capital stabilization fund every year. Well, last year it didn't happen,
No, it did last year.
or the year before it didn't happen. So my point is, we wanna have a $250,000 or $500,000, but how are you gonna base it? Are you gonna put $100,000 a year in this thing out of operating? Out of stabilization? You're not. So I mean, you're lucky to put $10,000 or $20,000 in there. So if you're trying to get to $500,000, you're talking 20 years down the road before you have any decent money. So putting 500 in there just to get it opened is one thing. Having a cap is nice. But where's that money coming from over the next 10 or 20 years? How is it going to be based?
Well, this doesn't say it's reoccurring, this is just a one-time.
This is a one
No,
time
but if you
seed,
put
but-
on a funding mechanism,
Put the money in, it's not gonna go in there.
So, could I ask, and we have the right people in the room, our financial management policies, as stated, note that we will continue to maintain a conservation fund to be used in part for the purchase of land or conservation restrictions or APRs on lands that exhibit high value for protection because, et cetera. Conservation Commission is responsible for formulating and prioritizing that list. It shall be the goal, and we all approve this, to maintain a balance in the conservation fund of at least 2% of the town's current and annual budget exclusive of enterprises. Is it fair that we then make up a secondary fund? And again, we're basing this on the new powers of the agricultural commissions. This is kind of how this started, right? Because we know you can now manage funds similar to how conservation can, or manage lands. Should we plan within our financial management policies to do the same? And if we do, then we've got a number.
But wasn't the intent of that partially to preserve agricultural land, open lands, open space, so that,
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd
Yeah.
go and duplicate, you're not saying another 2%, are you?
I don't know.
Well,
Are we?
just my own ignorance, can we make a distinction between that and this?
Right, cause that's, to me, that was almost trying to cover this, I don't know that,
I mean, do we need, does that tackle what's trying to be accomplished here and maybe just not everyone was aware of it? Or are they two different distinct things that have different
I think they're
uses?
two different distinct,
And
because
how-
conservation is restricted to conservation uses, and if it's any type of, I believe, recreation, it's passive. So it's more restricted. The agricultural preservation covers open space and other uses, and that opens up to grants and opens up to other funding.
does
Conservation
that say
is more
open space?
restrictive.
It does.
What
So-
about the
open space
it's duplicate, the big difference is the town controls that, the Ag Commission will control the
Well,
other
the
one.
Conservation Commission is responsible for prioritizing the list,
Right.
but you're right, they don't manage it.
That's still a town account,
Is
this
that-
will not be a town account.
So again, this is purchase of land, conservation restriction, or agricultural preservation restriction on lands that exhibit high value for protection because they contain important natural resources. That is not limited in any way to agricultural.
No, but it includes
notes-
it.
It included it, but it's not limited to it. I
So
think
the intent was partially to try to cover some of this in that fund. So
So
think-
does that, I mean, after hearing that, it sounds like a lot of what you just said was incorporated in that, because it covers open space and it covers agricultural, as well as conservation.
Yes, on the new agricultural or the existing
The
conservation?
existing conservation.
So can we amend
It-
that
it-
so a portion of those
It
funds
covers
are
it, but
given to the Ag Commission
it
and
is
that's where
more
it's funded?
restrictive. I don't think, I'm just trying to think what kind of a use. It's to protect the natural resources, so if it's a wetland, which it could possibly be with conservation, you're very limited by the Wetlands Protection Law, what you can do with that property. So we're not really talking about the same thing, because
You're not anyway, though? If it, I mean, in any case, aren't you
I don't
somewhat
know
limited
about
by
agriculture
wetlands?
thing. Have you ever heard of agriculture
No.
growing in Concom before?
No.
Never.
No, okay. And again, my ignorance, just asking.
All passive recreation
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
not doing anything with it, but not growing on it.
But I think when we
Crops.
established that fund, part of it was to cover this type of an issue, open and farmland.
Wasn't that fund is from the fees from Concom
yeah.
only, not from the
It
town?
says 2%, it should be
Yeah,
equal
but
to
it's
2% of
fees
the budget.
they collected.
It's the fees that was collected.
So I did look up Amherst. The Conservation Commission and the Agricultural Commission work together in land preservation.
I think he did say that the other.
They maintain different things, APRs, ownership through recreation, 61As.
But I would check with legal if there's a way of funding this account partially through those funds.
Well, there's multiple ways, and actually Margaret suggested one, and then we've talked about one in the past. The Community Preservation Act would fund this. It's something we could look into. The other option that Margaret suggested, and I think has come up again, right, Leah, was, and it would take legislative action, but it would be where solar, for example, pilot monies, a percentage of those monies would be put specifically into the fund, sort of like our own solar version of the Community
Right.
Preservation Act. It would take a lot of work to do it. I don't know that you would put every dollar of solar monies towards it, but that's an option as well. I thought this was the easy one. All right. There was never, I didn't think there was ever a question, and we've been talking about this for years, of creating this fund. This was meant to be a good idea.
I don't think anybody disagrees it's a good idea.
Okay.
The concern is how it's managed.
Agreed. I do question the calling it open space when this is very clearly specific to AgCom, because you presented it, therefore agricultural, knowing what we just read in our own financial management policies.
We purposely did it, we did talk about that in our committee, but we purposely did that to keep our doors open for other than agricultural space.
But you're the Agricultural Commission. Wouldn't Conservation take that on?
The open space committee, well, not that the open space
Well-
committee's going anymore, but the open space plan for any grants that's going for open space could be taken from the open space plan.
Yes. And that's Conservation Commission.
It's gone, yeah.
Could open space be used for agricultural then, and like lease the land out to a?
Some of it is being hayed, I mean, that's
So it's,
agricultural.
it easily could be crossed between both.
I think
May.
it's meant to be cooperative.
Right.
I think we just
To
want
be
to
more
make sure we're not.
universal.
Yeah.
I think that's why Holden did it, because they had very little open space, or open agricultural space, you know.
Wouldn't we want this to be specific to agricultural, coming from the Agricultural Commission?
I'm just thinking like, why can't part of that 2% go into this account to specifically address
Well,
agriculture?
so that would be an easy fix. The
Right.
town will continue to maintain a conservation fund, but we would essentially add a secondary fund. That's
Right,
what the
well,
request
those
is.
funds are owned and controlled by the town, these funds will not, so it would have to be funds that would be redirected to this fund.
But weren't those funds come in from permits that were taken out for agriculture?
But it's still for the same purpose, it still meets the purpose of agriculture, and so it's still in the same realm.
Well-
It's being used for the same,
Not really, because we're talking about wetlands, we're talking about water, we're talking,
they're talking about agricultural land and they're talking about open space.
not in this conservation one, the way you
Yeah.
just read it.
Yes, it
To be
addresses-
used for the purchase of land or conservation restrictions or agricultural preservation restrictions on lands that exhibit high value for protection because they contain important natural resources. It's very broad. It's very broad.
But it's for protection for.
Yes.
The only thing that you've said, Sheila, I mean, we can talk about this all night, is
Yeah.
I would be careful about, I would be careful about taking about out the open space, any more than we would take it out of the conservation, because it could ultimately be something that the Ag Commission looks at and says, this piece of open space land would be an ideal XYZ for agriculture. So why does it have to be agriculture to agriculture? Why can't it be open to agriculture? I
don't think it would. I guess I'm not reading it as limiting it in that way. I guess I'm reading it as limiting in the idea that they don't get to purchase a waterfall because they like it, because it's not agricultural. But it's a valid location for conservation, which is why we have this fund that we're supposed to be keeping 2% in. I got you.
Gotta water your crops.
I thought,
I think you're straying too far from the subject myself.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought originally you had talked about doing like agricultural and open space preservation fund. Like I thought agricultural had been in there, even in the draft that I had seen, but I don't remember.
That is agriculture, it's open space.
The word agriculture was never there.
It wasn't?
No. Hold it came as open.
It says maintained as open space.
We spoke about it, but it was never. And it may come to some of the wordage for grant opportunities as well. I can't really speak about that. Gives us more opportunities for grants through the town, through that possibly as well.
Right, that's what I was just writing.
It's even called an open space preservation fund. That's what it's called in the article.
Yeah. No, I was saying I thought that it had said agricultural and open space.
It did early on, right?
It does down here. It says forestry, agricultural, and passive recreational land.
The original iterations of this had it as an agricultural, the title was different, right? No?
You guys want this to go forward this meeting, right? Is
Yes.
that something that you want
But
to
I mean,
kick down the road?
you can do 25. I guess the debate still, is the one on how the account's set up, right? Isn't that the major debate?
I'm ready to motion to place it, just to let the townspeople decide.
Well, it's for opinion.
Yeah, based, subject to opinion by legal.
Right.
It's Article 25 you're talking.
25.
Motion to place Article 25.
As presented?
Second,
As presented? Is there any
No.
more comment?
not as presented as, yeah, as presented, yes.
No changes?
Subject to
Subject to
Subject to
legal.
legal opinion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Just clarification. So it's placed.
it's going to legal.
Legal comes back with a suggestion. You as the selectman accept the suggestion.
Legal doesn't come back with suggestions. Legal comes back with corrections to ensure that it will pass legal muster on the floor. They don't make, hey, wouldn't you like it better this way, but you could go either way. They don't do that. It's, here's your language, here's where it's right,
So they correct,
they correct it.
period, and we take it that, you take it that way to be on the warrant.
Yep.
We don't go to legal for anything other than, please make sure this is right. Here's how we have it.
And if they
you
say it's
fix it.
wrong, you accept the change
We're
as
not
it
gonna
is.
change it on you.
No. If it's wrong, we're gonna fix it to ensure that it is legally correct.
No substantive changes.
No. I mean, you certainly, of all people, you've been at meetings where legal has stood up at the 11th hour and said, there's something wrong with this article, we can't act on
No.
this, right? And typically
Clarification.
and typically they've been resident petition articles that didn't get legal review. Not what we want to happen. Okay, onward, 26. Money.
Motion to place Article 26, $500.
Second.
Comments? We've gone too far with this. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Good luck.
Unanimous, and that's it.
Good luck.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Is there any more business to come before the board? Anybody have any questions, comments?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Oh, all in favor?
Can I get a motion on that?
8:09.